Mira thought her charm could control any man. But when her affair with Arjun Priya's husband was uncovered, she never imagined that Imran, her millionaire husband, and Priya would join forces in a revenge so dark it would leave both betrayers destroyed forever. Mira Khan lived a life many only dreamed of. Married to Imran Khan, a powerful real estate tycoon in Dubai, she was surrounded by opulence and privilege. Their mansion overlooked the glittering skyline. Their cars were custom imports, and their parties drew the wealthiest circles of the city. On the outside, the couple seemed untouchable, a perfect blend of success and elegance. Yet, beneath the marble floors and designer gowns, cracks had already begun to show in Mira's carefully crafted world. She had been married to Imran for nearly 7 years, and though the relationship had begun with promises of love and security, the charm had faded. Imran was often too busy with business deals, traveling between London, New York, and Singapore, leaving Mira in the vast mansion with only servants and silence for company. Loneliness became Mira's quiet companion, and it was in that emptiness that temptation began to take root. At family gatherings, she found herself drawn to Arjun, the charismatic husband of her cousin Priya. Arjun was different from Imran. He wasn't consumed by business or distracted by international investments. He had a magnetic presence, always knowing the right words to say, and he seemed to notice Mira in ways Imran no longer did. Their encounters began innocently, enough casual conversations at dinners, small glances across crowded rooms, laughter over shared stories. But as weeks turned into months, those fleeting exchanges deepened into something darker, something forbidden. For Mira, it was thrilling to feel desired again, and Arjun seemed to awaken a part of her that had long been buried under the weight of wealth and duty. She convinced herself that no one would ever know, that the walls of secrecy she built around her would keep the affair hidden. Yet, in Dubai's elite circles, secrets rarely stayed buried for long. Servants whispered, eyes lingered too long, and suspicion was quick to grow in a city where reputation was everything. Priya, Mira's cousin, had always trusted her. She admired her luxurious lifestyle and often looked to her for guidance, never suspecting that betrayal could come from within her own bloodline. Arjun, however, cared little for the consequences. His thrill came from the danger itself, the reckless abandon of crossing a line no one dared to touch. Their meetings became more frequent, and Mira's mansion, once a lonely palace, turned into a secret rendezvous point. But the more entangled she became, the more Mira felt the weight of fear creeping in. She knew Imran's pride was as vast as his empire, and if he ever discovered her betrayal, the consequences would be devastating. Yet, the pull of forbidden love was too strong, and she convinced herself that she could manage both worlds. The glamorous life of a millionaire's wife and the dangerous thrill of being another man's secret lover. What she didn't know was that this double life was about to collapse in the most unimaginable and destructive way, setting the stage for a crime that would shock even the most jaded hearts of Dubai's high society. Imran Khan was a man who prided himself on control. He controlled his empire with precision, ensuring every contract, every partnership, and every investment reflected his dominance in Dubai's cutthroat business world. But he also controlled his household, believing loyalty and honor were the foundations of his family's name. For him, image was everything. What he did not realize was that his wife, the woman he presented at galas as a symbol of perfection, was already slipping beyond his reach. Rumors began to filter into his world in subtle ways. A business associate mentioned seeing Mira at a cafe in June, laughing too comfortably with a man who was not her husband. A driver recalled noticing the same man's car parked near their mansion more often than seemed ordinary. Though Imran dismissed the first whispers, they planted seeds of suspicion in his mind. Meanwhile, Mira and Arjun continued to weave their tangled web of passion and secrecy. They found clever ways to conceal their affair, meeting under the guise of family gatherings, sneaking stolen hours in luxury hotels where no one would dare question them. For Mira, these moments provided an intoxicating escape from her rigid marriage. For Arjun, however, the affair became more than lust, it was leverage. He began to see Mira not only as a lover but as a gateway to wealth and influence he could never attain on his own. Arjun had always envied Imran's position, and now he found himself dangerously close to infiltrating that untouchable circle. But with each risk they took, the danger grew. Priya, Arjun's wife, started to notice changes in her husband. He was distracted, his excuses sloppy, his late nights more frequent. Though she trusted him, Her instincts told her something was wrong. One evening, while Arjun was in the shower, Priya scrolled through his phone and stumbled upon a series of messages that froze her blood. The words were carefully hidden, using coded phrases and nicknames, but there was no mistaking the truth. Her husband was involved with another woman. What Priya did not know immediately was who that woman was. As Priya pieced the puzzle together, Imran's suspicions reached a breaking point. He had built his empire by relying on instincts, and those same instincts now screamed that his wife was deceiving him. He hired a private investigator, someone discreet and trustworthy, to follow Mira's movements. Within days, the investigator returned with photographs that left no room for doubt. Mira and Arjun together in a hotel, their embrace undeniable. Imran stared at the images in silence, his pride and honor crumbling beneath the weight of betrayal. The discovery shattered the carefully constructed facade of his life. For Imran, this was not simply about love or marriage, it was about humiliation. In a culture where pride was currency and betrayal was unforgivable, the thought of being mocked by Dubazilid burned hotter than any personal heartbreak. But instead of confronting Mira immediately, Imran chose patience. He understood power, and he knew that revenge, when timed correctly, could be far more devastating than a moment of anger. What neither Mira nor Arjun realized was that their secret was no longer theirs to keep. Imran now held the truth in his hands, and Priya was quietly closing in on her own devastating realization. Two betrayed spouses, each fueled by anger and shame, were about to set in motion a chain of events that would transform a hidden affair into a story of shocking vengeance and irreversible destruction. Priya sat alone in her bedroom, the glow of her phone casting harsh light across her face as she scrolled through Arjun's messages again and again. Each word pierced her deeper. But what unsettled her most was a familiar detail she had overlooked before. The restaurant reservations, the choice of perfumes mentioned, the hotel suite preferences, all were eerily aligned with Mira's habits. Priya had spent years observing her cousin's wife, attending family events together, sharing gossip, exchanging casual conversations. Suddenly the fragments clicked into place. The realization hit her like a violent storm. The woman who had betrayed her marriage was none other than Mira, her stomach twisted with nausea, her chest heavy with rage. It was no longer just an affair. It was a betrayal from within her own family. The betrayal cut deeper than anything Priya had ever imagined. She had welcomed Mira into her home countless times, served her tea, confided in her during moments of vulnerability. To think that the same woman had been secretly plotting behind her back, stealing her husband in whispers and shadows, filled her with a hatred she had never known before. Yet Priya was not impulsive by nature. She knew anger alone could destroy her if she acted without thought. Instead, she resolved to gather proof to ensure that when she confronted both of them, there would be no denial, no escape. She began watching Arjun more carefully, noting every excuse, every sudden phone call. When he claimed he was working late, she followed discreetly, her heart pounding as she tailed his car through the bustling streets of Dubai. One night, she parked across from a luxurious hotel and saw him step out with Mira at his side, their hands brushing in a gesture of intimacy that made her tremble with fury. She snapped photographs with shaking fingers, her tears blurring the lens. The evidence was undeniable, and with it, her resolve hardened into something darker. At the same time, Imran was playing his own silent game. Though he had the proof of Mira's betrayal, he had not yet revealed it. He moved through his business meetings with his usual stoicism, but inside he seethed with humiliation. His empire, his image, and his identity were under attack not from an enemy in the boardroom, but from within the sanctity of his own home. He had always believed enemies could be bought, silenced, or destroyed. But betrayal from his wife and cousin-in-law presented a different kind of wound. To the outside world, everything appeared normal, but Imran had already begun to plan a punishment that would shake them to their core. Unbeknownst to both Argan and Mira, their reckless passion had united two powerful forces against them. Priya's fury and Imran's wounded pride were quietly converging, setting the stage for a reckoning neither of the lovers could foresee. Their affair had once felt thrilling, a forbidden escape from reality, but now it was becoming a death sentence. Every move they made was being watched, every secret moment was documented, and every whisper of love was leading them deeper into a trap carefully laid by the very people they thought powerless. Priya, with her heart consumed by vengeance, began to consider not just exposing them but ensuring they suffered for what they had taken from her. Imran, calculating and cold, knew that humiliation was not enough. This betrayal required retribution that would echo through every corner of their lives. Both had been wronged, and both were ready to act. The affair was no longer a secret love story. It had transformed into the beginning of a dangerous, inevitable downfall. Imran sat in his office one late evening, the city's skyline glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He had just finished reading a report on his wife's movements compiled by a private investigator he trusted. The photographs were clear. Mira was seen leaving restaurants and hotels with her body language exposing a level of intimacy that could not be explained away. Imran clenched his fists, his knuckles whitening as the images confirmed what his instincts had already told him. For a man who built his empire on loyalty and respect, this was not just betrayal, it was humiliation that reached deep into his soul. Yet beneath his rage, his mind worked with the cold precision of a businessman plotting his next move. He would not lash out blindly. He would orchestrate something far more devastating, a punishment fitting for the deception he had endured. Meanwhile, Priya sat at her kitchen table with the evidence she had gathered, her heart torn between despair and fury. She knew she could not confront Arjun alone. He was manipulative, and worse, she feared he would deny everything or paint her as paranoid. She thought about Mira and the betrayal that cut both her marriage and her family ties in one stroke. That night, Priya made a decision that would change the course of her life. She reached out to Imran. It was not an easy choice, but she knew they were bound by the same wound, two victims connected through the treachery of their spouses. Their first meeting was tense. Imran's presence was commanding. His expression, unreadable as Priya, placed her photographs on the table between them. He responded by sliding the investigator's file toward her. In that quiet exchange, without words of sympathy or comfort, they acknowledged the truth. Mira and Arjun had destroyed them both. For the first time, Priya felt the weight of her anger shared. Imran's calm but dangerous demeanor reassured her that she was not alone in her pain. They did not speak of forgiveness, because neither of them believed in it anymore. Instead, they began to talk of justice, not in the legal sense, but in a way that would ensure both betrayers paid a heavy price. Imran suggested patience, reminding Priya that rushing could expose their intentions too soon. He had resources, influence, and the ability to make people disappear if necessary, but he was not reckless. Priya, on the other hand, brought raw emotion and the intimate knowledge of Arjun's weaknesses. Together, they formed a strange alliance, built on revenge rather than trust. They began to meet in discreet locations, always careful not to attract suspicion. With each conversation, their plans sharpened. Moving from vague anger into specific strategies that grew more dangerous with every passing day, Priya's grief began transforming into a cold determination. She no longer cried when she thought about Arjun. Instead, she pictured the way his arrogance would collapse when he realized that both she and Imran had turned against him. Imran, equally focused, masked his emotions with the discipline of a man accustomed to power. He knew Mira well enough to anticipate her moves, her vanity, her desire for wealth, and her reckless overconfidence. He explained to Priya that such traits could be exploited, and together they discussed ways to lure both Arjun and Mira into situations that would seal their fates. As their alliance deepened, something unspoken formed between them. It was not affection, but a mutual recognition of shared pain and purpose. They both knew they were walking down a dangerous path, but neither cared. The damage had already been done, and now it was about control reclaiming the power that had been stolen from them. Every meeting ended with the same silent agreement. They would not stop until the two lovers had been destroyed, not just physically, but emotionally. Their lives stripped of everything they had tried to build in secrecy. By the end of that week, Priya and Imran were no longer just victims of betrayal. They had become architects of revenge, bound together by a darkness that grew stronger every day. And while Arjun and Mira continued their reckless affair, oblivious to the storm gathering around them, their future was already being rewritten by the very people they had betrayed. The night had arrived, and with it the final act of the revenge, carefully plotted by Imran and Priya. Neither Mira nor Arjun had the slightest suspicion of what was coming. Mira believed she was meeting Imran at a secluded villa on the outskirts of Dubai to discuss financial matters, a place where she thought she could charm her husband back into submission. Arjun, told separately by Priya that she wanted to reconcile and talk privately, was invited to the same villa under a different pretense. The stage was set with precision. Every detail planned to ensure both betrayers would walk straight into the trap without realizing it. Mira arrived first, her designer heels clicking against the marble floors as she entered the dimly lit room. She carried herself with confidence, convinced that she still held power over her husband. She rehearsed the excuses she would offer, ready to feign innocence and manipulate her way back into Imran's good graces. But the atmosphere in the villa unsettled her. It was too quiet, too cold, the air thick with tension she could not name. She waited, sipping the drink that had been prepared for her, unaware that she was already under Imran's watchful eye through hidden cameras. Minutes later, Arjun entered through another door, equally unsuspecting. He looked around, expecting Priya, only to freeze when he saw Mira across the room. The shock on his face revealed everything, erasing any possibility of denial. For the first time, the two lovers realized they had been trapped. Their affair, which had thrived in secrecy, now stood exposed in the harsh reality of that silent villa. Then came Imran and Priya. They didn't rush or shout. They walked in calmly, side by side, like executioners carrying out a sentence. The sight of them together struck fear into Mira and Arjun, who instinctively knew that the game was over. Priya's eyes burned with fury, but her expression was controlled, every movement precise, as if Imran's presence was colder still, his calm voice carrying more weight than any scream could. The two betrayed spouses did not need to exchange words. Their unity spoke volumes, and the silence in the room was suffocating. Imran revealed the evidence: photographs, recordings, documents, laying them out methodically, ensuring there was no room left for lies. Mira tried to defend herself, her words tumbling out in desperation. But the confidence she carried just moments before had evaporated. Arjun attempted to step forward to take control, but Priya's glare froze him in place. Every excuse they tried sounded hollow, crumbling under the weight of the betrayal that could no longer be hidden. The punishment, however, was not delivered with violence in that moment. Imran and Priya had crafted something far more devastating. Each drink Mira and Arjun had consumed had been tainted, not enough to kill immediately, but enough to begin a slow, irreversible downfall. It was not poison in the traditional sense, but a fate that would rob them of health, strength, and peace. Neither Mira nor Arjun realized it at first, but both were marked by the very revenge they thought they could escape. Imran and Priya left the villa together, not looking back as their betrayers sat in shock, confusion, and growing dread. Outside, the desert night was still, the stars hanging silently above as if bearing witness. For Imran, the humiliation was erased. For Priya, the pain transformed into grim satisfaction. They did not smile, for this was not victory in the joyous sense, but a reclamation of dignity stolen from them. In the days that followed, the consequences unfolded swiftly. Mira and Arjun's health deteriorated, their wealth and influence drained as Imran and Priya quietly ensured their ruin. Once admired, they became whispers of scandal in Dubai society, their names forever stained. Meanwhile, Imran and Priya's strange alliance endured, not born of love, but of shared vengeance. The betrayal that had once broken them had now bound them in a dark, unshakable bond, and the story of their revenge became one whispered in hushed tones. A chilling reminder of what happens when loyalty is shattered.